Hi, I'm Ellie Foumbi. I am a filmmaker, writer, director of Our Father the Devil. I am so happy to be here talking to Nisha Pahuja, who wrote and directed To Kill a Tiger, the groundbreaking doc that has been making waves and is now Oscar nominated. Nisha, welcome. Thank you for doing this Q&A with me. How are you
Oh,
feeling?
I'm so happy to be here with you. I can't, I'm so happy to be here with you. You have no idea. Thank you.
Oh.
Uh,
I was so lucky to be able to watch your film for the first time on the big screen, and it was so impactful both visually and emotionally. Can you talk a little bit about what initially drew you to the story?
yeah. So, when I first started making this documentary, it was actually going to be a completely different film. And
Mm,
I was making a film that was sort of, I would describe it more of an essay, like it was probably more of an essay kind of film. And it was looking at masculinity in India. And I was following the work of the local organization, the NGO that was they were running a gender sensitization program with men and boys. And so I was filming with them and filming the work that they were doing with men and boys to try to change, a definition of masculinity. And Ranjit, who's the father in the film, he was enrolled in this gender sensitization program.
mm.
And that's how I came across him and his story and the story of his family.
Wow. So how soon after the incident did you have contact with them, or did you approach them about wanting to tell this story?
Uh, you know, I don't remember, but I think it was probably about 5 days, like four
Wow.
between 4 days and 7 days. Like it was very, very fresh, extremely fresh. It had literally had just happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you have any hesitations about, I guess, approaching them so soon after the incident, given how young Kieran was at the time and, just
Yeah.
the mere freshness of the wounds, as you said. Were there
Yeah.
any precautions additional measures that you took?
Yeah. Yeah. It was huge. I had huge um it was a very, very sensitive time, and I was very aware of that. So there was a lot of kind of internal, churning and wondering whether we should do this, and if we do it, how to do it. But we just approached it very quietly, very calmly. um, we hung back, and obviously, the family gave us permission. We said, is it okay if we film? And at this time, we weren't even sure, A, whether we were going to use the material, B, how far the story was going to go. It was just literally, we're following the work of this organization. They're now going to support this family. So, that was our way in.
Mm,
So obviously, the very first day we did no filming with her. It was literally just her parents, and just the scene that you see in the film where Amit, the NGO worker, goes into their home.
mm.
That was literally the first time we met them, and it was the first time that we filmed with them. And we just were extremely sensitive and just stayed back. We were wide for the most part. Um, and yeah, just kind of, basically just got what we needed and left soon after. And then slowly, as it became clear that the case was going to go on and the family was going to pursue justice, we just slowly started to build this relationship with them of trust. And with her, it was, we always just did the bare minimum. It
Mm.
was, there was nothing kind of gratuitous or over. It was just the bare minimum that we needed. So it was, and we were always just extremely cautious. And that the master interview that you see in the film with her, and
Yes.
some sequences of her with her hair, her putting the ribbons in her hair that we used at the beginning, that was all shot after the case was over. So it was
Wow.
afterwards. Yeah, with at the time we just filmed really kind of the plot points of the story that were relevant to the trial.
Wow. And just you saying that, it makes me think about even the decision not to show her at the beginning. And did you guys always know? Can you talk a little bit about sort of the editing decision to withhold her face for so
Yeah.
long until, and what were some of the conversations you were having with your editor in terms of when was the right time to reveal her in the film?
Well, we do show her pretty early on in the film itself, right? Like, first we start off, it's a bit
Yes.
abstract with her hands and size of her
Yes. That's
eyes.
true. Yeah.
And then eventually, we do see her full face. But what we were planning to do is in post production, we were going to find a technique that would hide her identity, that would mask her identity, while at
Mm,
the same time doing something that was kind of um, artful and creative, that would allow us also to not kind of diminish her humanity or extinguish her presence, right? Like we wanted to find something where she actually, you could still feel her. So we
yeah.
tried some of these beautiful things. There were some really interesting things. There was like a blur that had this kind of almost watercolor effect. It was very aesthetically beautiful. There were uh, there was animation that we tried, lots of different kinds of animation, and then we also literally worked with an actor to use the actor's face to replace.
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw Welcome to Chechnya, but it was a technique that the filmmakers used,
Mm,
and we were literally, it was just like a deep fake kind of thing, and we were going to do that as well. It didn't work. It didn't work for us, but it was something that we were trying. Um, and what happened was, because it took so long for us to make the film, because it took 8 years. By the time we finished, she was she was 18. By the
mm,
time we finished the film, she was 18 years old.
wow.
So she could, at that point, kind of give us the permission to show her. So we were having conversations with her and her family was always absolutely, she has nothing to be ashamed of. She should step up and be in front of this. And then she said, oh, I want to see the film before I make a decision. And she saw the film and instantly said yes. Like just
Wow.
didn't even have to think about it. Just
Oh, what a
yeah,
healing, powerful, also, it's almost her taking her power back again. It's her story, and she has sort of that the right and that agency to be able to release it into the world, which is really beautiful. Where your film hooked me emotionally from the beginning was when Ranjit was talking about, in the opening of the film, he was talking about when his wife was pregnant and she was convinced they were going to have a boy. And he said, no, he wants to have a girl. Given even just the statistics that you guys posted, how difficult some of the challenges that young girls face in India, particularly around these kinds of issues, um, is it unusual for a man in India to want a girl? Can you talk a little bit about that and just what your general impressions were of him and
yeah,
his family?
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know if you know about kind of the skewed gender ratio in India
Mm,
between boys and girls, and the number of I don't know what the stats are now, but it used to be like the rates of female feticide and female infanticide, female feticide especially was extreme. It might still be, in certain parts of the country, very very high, right? So
wow.
uh, India has a very skewed gender ratio to from boys and girls, um, and so it's extremely uncommon for anyone, to say that they want their firstborn to be a daughter or that they even want a daughter. Like that's not uh it's an uncommon thing, right? Everybody wants sons. You want boys
Mm,
to keep the family name alive, and because boys are the ones that will, take care of the parents, and there's a sense of a girl is, because of the dowry system, a girl takes wealth away from the family. So there are all sorts of inbuilt prejudices against girls and women.
Wow.
So the fact that he said that he wanted a daughter, as soon as he said that, I just thought, this is not a usual man. This is a unique and very special human being. And sure enough, that's exactly, what he turned out to be. And I think he has um he's not a perfect person, right? Like
Of
as the
course
film
not.
shows, he's flawed just like all of us, and he's complicated like all of us. But what he does have is a real quiet strength and dignity and resolve, which is his kind of secret weapon. I don't think people took him seriously. They didn't know
Right.
how committed he was to something. And I think he also has a deep kind of inherent um, questioning. He's somebody who thinks, and he thinks big thoughts, like philosophically. He asks questions, and his approach is very much kind of rooted in equality. Like
Mm.
he's a humanist. I wouldn't even say he's a feminist. He's a humanist, and he just sees the equality of all beings. And
Mm.
that was something that really really struck me. And it's infused. He's kind of infused that in his children. Yeah.
Mm. So did you know, I mean, did you know early on that this was, for me, this is a father-daughter story. I don't focus so much on what happened to Kira, even though it is obviously the issue of the film, Kieran, excuse me. But it's what I take away from this beautiful film is that love. Did you know that it was going to be a father-daughter story, or is that something you guys, found in the editing, or just sort of
Yeah.
decided to use
Yeah.
as the frame for the story?
Yeah. Well, I knew from the moment he said what he said about loving his daughter, I knew
Mm,
that relationship was going to be central, and it was going to be key, because it was also, in a way, sort of the antidote to the masculinity that I had been seeing in the men's groups, that I was also filming with, right? So it was
yeah,
this is what this is what a healthy masculinity looks like. This is what a father should be doing, right? This is what we
absolutely.
need to
Absolutely.
do. So there were definitely conscious decisions to ensure that relationship was front and center. That there were things that we were filming of the two of them kind of together, which wasn't very easy to be
Mm,
honest, because they're also not uh, emotive necessarily. You know what I mean?
yes.
So it's not a typical, it wasn't a easy sort of thing to do. So you're just kind of hanging back and waiting for those moments to happen, right? And so it was
Yeah.
a lot of just sitting and waiting for verite scenes to unfold. But yes, we certainly knew that was central. I think what I wasn't expecting was kind of the depth of love, and the depth of love, and the really deep kind of respect that he had for her. I mean,
Yeah.
incredible. It was incredible. He actually said some things that which I wasn't able to use in the film because we just ran out of time. But one of the things that he said, I asked him at one point whether he felt that he could forgive those men for what they did to his daughter. And he
Mm,
he said, well, it didn't happen to me, so I don't have the right to forgive. It happened to her, and it's only she has the right to forgive. It was just
that's so
incredible.
powerful.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah,
Wow. And I mean, talking about sort of the toxic masculinity, I was so moved. There's Amit and there's these other men who are fighting
yeah,
for women's rights. And even their emotional responses at the end when the
yeah,
case was won, it made me think about, because I was able to watch your previous doc, The World Before Her, And I was really struck by the parallels, in this doc. For those of you who haven't seen it, you should go and watch it because it's very powerful. You are also, following two women, one who is competing to become a Miss India, and the other one who is running a camp. She's running a camp for young girls, sort of to uphold the Hindu religion.
Yeah.
And she is, fiercely defending these traditional values, and at the same time is wrestling with them. And so I was really struck by the juxtaposition of this old India versus the new India. And I thought to myself, my God, you made this film 12 years ago. This was 2012 when this film was released. And I thought, well, these are some of the same struggles we're seeing here in To Kill a Tiger, with the mentality of the villagers. And you have this new generation of particularly men who have realized that it's also their job to join the fight to change things. Can you talk a little bit about the impact that this case has had, and the change of, that you've seen over the years, and sort of in having made the world before her at the time when you made it, what what changes, or what impact do you feel that this case has had?
This particular case, I wouldn't say that it hasn't had an impact on the country.
Got it.
I think it will now that the film is out, and people are going to see it, and people are going to, I think, just be blown away by this family.
Yeah.
Resilience of her and her parents. I think it will definitely have an impact. It'll definitely be a conversation starter. And because we're going to do all this work with the film in terms of an impact campaign, I think that will also really, really be change making,
Mhm.
impactful. That's definitely the intention. But overall, Ali, like, I've been making films now. I mean, you mentioned The World Before Her, which is about similar issues, and that was
Yes.
about female infanticide to a degree, right? It touched on that.
Yes.
Um, and I'm not the headlines that come out of India, like the kind of the things that you hear, the stories, the sexual violence, the Delhi gang rape, like what that incident, the rape in 2012 of the young woman on the bus,
Yeah.
and how it really galvanized the country and the world. And it did have a tremendous impact on laws in the country around sexual violence, right? Um, and those laws actually were part of why these young men were sentenced,
Mm.
to the degree that they were, right? It's all kind of a ripple effect.
Yeah.
But I think the key here is how do you change culture? How
Yeah.
do you make real, deep, systemic change to the way people think, so that it's not coming necessarily out of fear or punishment, but out of a sense of what is right and wrong, right? And how do you change that? And that takes a very, very long time. And I'm not without hope at all, right? I'm actually really optimistic, and
Mm.
I know that this is like, this is the long game, right? Like,
Yeah.
the way, you're talking about the men that are now involved in the struggle for women's rights,
Yes.
Amit and Mahinderji and the organization, right? So it's they're in it for the long haul, and they used to be those men. They used to
Wow.
be the men that they've changed. That was them, you know.
Wow.
20 years ago, Mahinderji was like those men in that village. So it is possible, but it is a lot of sort of grassroots, one-on-one kind of activism that has to happen concurrent to things like systems change and legal reform. Like, it all kind of has to
Yeah.
go hand in hand for it to be, um, I guess, felt in a profound way. It will happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What have the reactions been? I mean, have you been able to show it to people in the village? Has have you seen that change already start to happen with them watching the film?
Yeah.
And also, I'm really curious if, Karen and her family are aware of the magnitude of this honor, of this Oscar
Yeah.
nomination, and what their reaction was to it.
Yeah. So the no nobody in the community has seen the film other than the family and the ward member
Okay.
and the other people that were in the film. So that is definitely something that we're going to do. Like we have to work with the community and
Mm.
local activists in the area, and we're going to hold a screening because, you know, for me, it feels like this film, it's like that community gave us something to learn from,
Yes.
right? As tragic as this is, as awful as it is, what happened to her, it's like what Ranjit says in the film at one point, right? Like, I will think of this as a sacrifice that my daughter made, you know, and
Yes.
we want to make sure that that sacrifice isn't in vain, and that what happened to her actually becomes something that can create change. And where, for me, where it feels right to start, and this was something that somebody in India said to me, which I thought was so brilliant. They said, you have to start in the community itself. Your first your first offering, your first giving back has to be to the community from which this came, which I thought was so powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so that's what we're gonna do.
That's beautiful. So my
Yeah.
last question is, what do you hope audiences take away from this film? Is there kind of a tangible, something tangible that you think they can do to sort of have an impact on this issue?
Um, I think there's a couple of things, but for unless I'll just tell you what the response was to the Oscars, like to, you
Oh,
know,
yes,
yeah.
sorry. Yes, that was very, very,
No,
very,
this is
very much want to know
so
that.
she was really ecstatic, and apparently she just sort of screamed with joy. Somebody from our team was on the phone with her in India, and Ranjit said the most beautiful thing. He said that he didn't know what the Oscars were necessarily, like he didn't quite understand them, but he knew that they were a really big deal, and he felt that the fact that we'd been nominated, it meant that the world was appreciating their struggle for justice,
Mm,
that this was a way to cast light into darkness, and that he wanted to thank his daughter for giving him the strength to go on this journey. And
wow.
which was so beautiful, so beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, and in terms of, you know, what do I want people to walk away with? I think for me, you know, um, what I'm hoping is that survivors, you know, more survivors come forward, and that we actually help to dismantle this, you know, these ideas of shame, right,
Yeah.
around being a survivor of sexual violence. You know,
Mm,
how do we sort of how do we become more empathetic? How do we improve those systems that survivors have to navigate, so that, you know, seeking justice isn't such an ordeal, you know, it doesn't
yeah.
feel like yet another ordeal on top of what they've already been through. And then, of course, for me, it is about how do we have the conversation, the necessary conversation on masculinity in a way that doesn't make men feel guilty,
Yes.
alienate men, or feel like they have something to be ashamed of, you know, which is to me a little bit sometimes what I feel the conversation, you know, veers towards. It's like we're losing. We have to have compassion for everyone in this, because this system that is this patriarchal system that we all operate under is oppressive for everyone. It's not just,
Absolutely.
you know, and so you have to, I think, have compassion for men as well. So, but they do have to join us. I think it's important that men recognize they do have power, that they have a certain kind of power that we don't have as women, and that it is. Somebody said to me, one of the activists said to me, it was so beautiful. You know, she said that for her, she felt that what was at stake was men's own humanity, and that's what they had to grapple with, you know, for their own humanity, for their own sake, they
Yeah.
needed to address the power imbalance. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Right.
Thank you so much for, spending this time with me. Nisha Pahuja, good luck at the Oscars. We are going
Thank
to be
you.
cheering for to Kill a Tiger, and we are also cheering for Kieran and her family and hoping that she, continues to have like a successful future. She has a bright future ahead of her, and this is such an important story. And I hope more people, especially in India, really looking forward to the reaction there and to the film, hitting theaters and people being able to see this important story. Thank you. Of
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you so much for your time. So appreciate it.
course.